One-on-One, a weekly sports interview show featuring a personalized look into the world of sports.
Welcome to One-on-One. I'm Mike Shumann, your host. This week we're going to talk road racing, not with a car, not with a motorcycle, but those two little things called your feet. Our guest, Dave Rhody, president, I should say, of Rhody Co-Productions and responsible for a lot of races throughout the Bay Area. Dave, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, well, thank you for inviting us.
All right. First of all, let's get right off the plug right off. You've got a race coming up New Year's Eve, and what's that all about?
Yeah, it's Campbell's Soup's first run, pretty appropriately named for New Year's Eve, and it's become very popular, I think, because it is a way for people to, you know, actually live out their New Year's resolution to commitment to fitness. So we
on day one.
Day one, at the stroke of midnight. In fact, actually, that's the other aspect so attractive. It starts at the stroke of midnight with fireworks going off overhead. Now it's been going on now for this is the 7th year in San Francisco, right down in Crissy Field. So you got a great view of the Golden Gate Bridge and fireworks, and right at the stroke of midnight, and a party afterward, and great T-shirts.
Oh, actually, and we have a T-shirt. It's show and tell today here on One-on-One.
This is, in fact, last year's T-shirt. This year's a very similar long sleeve, beautiful color shirts.
San Francisco's first run.
The kind of thing that people show off right after the first of the year and say, yeah, this is the way I started my New Year.
And I'll keep it.
Yeah.
Actually, now what that does, too, is cramp into your New Year's Eve partying. If you're going to run in this race, huh?
Yeah, well,
you want to stock up on fluids, but...
we actually like to promote the event as a non-alcoholic alternative to New Year's. In fact, some people do show up having partaken, I think, a little bit, and it doesn't prevent them from being able to run the 2 miles. Most people show up just because it's a good way to really party without alcohol and, you know, without dealing with people who are drunk, I think.
Right.
You know?
It's only a 2-mile run. That's sort of a short run in the scope of most sanctioned races.
It's real short, and we really design it that way so anybody can do it. We get a lot of people running it, and a lot of people walking it, and people coming out in groups together, and they really have a good time over the whole distance. But in fact, we have such great prizes, too, that we get a lot of Olympic caliber runners just running all out on that 2 miles and finishing it in under 10 minutes. So it's, you know, a very quick run for them, but for other people, they're out there for 40 minutes going along this lantern-lit course. And
where is the course? It goes from where to where?
Well, it's all down at Crissy Field. Just kind of loops around on the flats of Crissy Field, no hills, and just big wide loops around there, out around underneath the Golden Gate Bridge, and finishes right in the commissary area of Crissy Field. U.S. Army Presidio works with us on it, and in fact, the MPs and everybody are out there.
You know, I was going to say, would you need security that late at night and something like this?
Well, part of the reason it's such a great place to do it is because, well, the U.S. Army has been great to work with on lots of events we've done over the years. And on New Year's Eve, yeah, it helps to have some security, and the MPs are there. They're always do a first-class job when it comes to being in the right place at the right time, controlling traffic, and being courteous to people at the same time.
All right. Okay. Now it's safe. I mean, it's a course that's blocked off. There's no traffic, no cars or anything of that nature.
No traffic and well lit. We, as I said, we light the course with lanterns. We use 500 Coleman lanterns to light up the course. We use those in place of what, you know, normally we would use cones in daylight hours.
Right.
And so it's real pretty. And then of course certain areas we light up with additional lighting as well. So people can see, but you definitely know you're on a night run, too.
All right, we're going to give a phone number away later on in the show as to how you can get in touch with Dave, but how else can you get involved or join in on the race?
Well, you'll see entry forms for first run in a publication that lots of runners are familiar with called the Schedule magazine.
Right.
Entry form in there, and entry forms readily available in any sporting goods store. And people can just fill out the entry form and send in there. Its pre-registration is $20. Send that in and still be pre-registered in time for New Year's and get their bib number back in the mail and directions as to how to get there and the whole thing. So it's real easy. And
you get the T-shirt. Now, you said there's prize money. Is this for the top?
Well, actually not prize money. It's a trip, and it's a trip that involves airfare and hotel. Last year it was to Australia, and this year I am forgetting which where it's to, but hey, it's a great trip.
It'll come back to you. It'll come to you later on. All right, so we'll give that phone number away. Now, you've been involved, you know, in running your entire life. I mean, what's your background? Where did you go to school? How did you get involved in the sport?
Well, actually, I'm kind of unusual as starting a runner, although more and more people, I think, got into it this way. I got into running initially to relieve stress.
Right.
I was actually started off in the seminary, and studying intensely, was getting to me, and I just started going out and running, with abandon just to get rid of the stress. Well, gradually, when I went into college, I was in pretty good shape, so I got into running cross country and track and field, and then from there got into road races. Nowadays, though, the millions, in fact, there are, the records show some 5 million people in the United States who participate in at least one running event a year. That's a lot of people. Most of them have gotten into it as a lifestyle thing, not as a competitive thing. I mean, most of them didn't come from, track and field background or something that was real competitive.
All right, now you started Rhody Productions, which is a promotion outfit production company who puts together these races, and actually we have some pictures here, so I'm going to flash these up for you, and you just tell us what races these are and then just some of the things you guys do.
Well, in fact, this is a good one to start with. This is a shot of the Houlihan's to Houlihan's race, which goes from Sausalito to San Francisco. It has about 5,000 runners in it. I think you see a huge crowd going up, snaking up that hill. It's a tough run. It's 12 kilometers, and that climb up to the Golden Gate Bridge, which is what you see here, that occurs in after the first mile and a half of the course, and then you get up on the bridge and then down through the Presidio and into Fisherman's Wharf. It's a good one to start with, as I mentioned, because it's what got me into the business. I had some friends who were managers of Houlihan's restaurants, and that's where the name came from, Houlihan's Sausalito, Houlihan's San Francisco. They knew me as an avid runner. I'd been running a lot of marathons at the time. This is 10 and a half, 11 years ago. Said, so Dave, you know how to run, you know how to put together a running event, which is, of course, not true. I knew nothing about putting together running events, but
and thus your company.
I fell for it, so I put it together, and it worked out. And in fact, one of your old buddies, Joe Montana, was there the first year and helped make it a success that first year. And it was really a matter of being in the right place at the right time. There weren't any professional organizers of runs, and once that one became a success, people found out who I was, called me up, can you help us with this run and that run, and it evolved.
Took off from there. Well, here you have a little celebrity action, and I'll let you explain that.
Well, and this is a shot of and actually shows the reason why, too. That is one of the Bay Area's most popular runs. It's Run to the Far Side. In the foreground, you see Gary Larson wearing bib number 1.
Number 1.
This is from a few years ago. And back behind him, you see about 12,000 runners lined up for first run, for the Run to the Far Side. This shot, I think, was taken in about 1991. The run draws about 12 to 14,000 people a year, always on Thanksgiving weekend and in through Golden Gate Park. And it offers every year a T-shirt with one of Gary's original cartoons.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, people just
that'll be a collector's item.
So many Larson fans, and I think it's become so popular because I think the mix is right. A lot of Larson fans who are also runners.
Right.
So it's really grown from that.
It makes sense. Now, you don't do just runs. Here you have a biathlon. Of course, that would be cycling and running, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. And, yeah, you and I were talking earlier about how multi-sport events, as we generally call them, including biathlons, which are now called, by the way, duathlons.
Politically correct.
Politically correct. And triathlons.
You're making me sick, but go ahead.
Yeah, they all evolved out of running. And that was a shot of the Software Publishing Corporation duathlon down in San Jose, which is the biggest duathlon now in Northern California. And it's just running and biking, a combination of those two sports put together. And a lot of people are getting more now into a variation on sports. You used to have, say 5 years ago, you used to have people identify themselves, I'm a runner. And that's all they did. That was their workout. They ran 30, 40, whatever.
That was it.
And that was it, yeah. And now people get into it. It started with a concept that was highly touted called cross-training.
Right.
And
you get bored doing one or the other, so you're trying to do a different sport.
Yeah, and then of course, a lot of support came for the idea of cross-training because, in fact, it's better for you. You're not having the same impact on the same parts of your body. Like with running, your knees get a lot of impact, and you switch around from cycling over to running and into doing some free weights and maybe some walking and some stair stepping. And I think now what we've got are people, those 5 million people I mentioned in the United States who run. They also do lots of other things, and they spread it out more.
Exactly. Yeah. Okay, this is Houlihan. We won't show that one. And our final picture on Show and Tell Day is our producer, Mike Tuckman.
Yeah.
All right, it's not Mike.
That's good.
Is this Beta Breakers or no?
Well, no. This is actually Run to the Far Side. The San Francisco Chronicle promotes a costume contest in it, and I was going to say, really, this just demonstrates how dinosaurs too have gotten into running in recent years. But this is the winner from this year.
Okay. Well, let's talk a little bit about that. I mean, you know, originally jogging became popular maybe in the late '60s, early '70s. Jim Fix, who came along, and then in 1984 he passed away, and you and I had talked prior, and a lot of people thought that that was it for jogging. You don't see a lot of joggers out there, diehard people like this, are getting into other avenues, but people, I guess jogging has stayed around because of the road racing popularity.
It's remarkable, and you know, I mean, I guess I should be thankful for it since it's, you know, created a business for myself and lots of other people. But more than that, it just becomes such a big part of American lifestyle. And there isn't anything like it. You know, when you think about it, where else do you have hundreds or even thousands of people getting together, all participating in the same sport at the same time?
You don't.
Yeah. I mean, you get crowds together like spectating, you know, big football game, and you got 60, 70,000 people watching a few hundred people, a couple hundred people involved in the sport down below. But in running, everybody participating together, and really, out of that group, I think what is not understood from the outside is that even though you have some people up front who are actually trying to win,
that are competing,
they're really competing, you actually do have competition all the way back through too. Because you've got all these age group divisions. The masters and seniors categories in competition have become very popular, and some great runners in those categories now in their 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s.
And even if somebody's not competing, you get in that race and you become competitive. You know, so it's a real dichotomy, I would imagine. Now, I mean, I was watching the triathlon last week, the Hawaiian one, and you know, it's taken endurance to another level. These guys swam for 2 miles, biked for 112, and ran a marathon for 26, all in a row in succession. I mean, that's more like punishment to me than recreation. And I mean, has endurance gone to this level to see how far these guys can take it? Or?
Well, these people are just mentally defective.
They're just psycho. I didn't want to say it because it's your profession, Dave.
No, I'm kidding. People used to accuse me of that too. I at one point got into ultra distance running, and you know, 100-mile races and that sort of thing. And I didn't even think 100-mile races up at the caliber of the Ironman in Hawaii. But what occurs to some people, and of course not to everyone, but some people who start getting into running or an endurance sport, well, one of the physiological things that we all know about now is endorphins. Well, and endorphins is known now to be a narcotic that is even stronger than heroin. You know,
and a lot cheaper.
You know, and
just
naturally
kidding,
produced. But it does. You know, it's no
the body
question.
Produces it,
Anybody who's run a few miles or done anything aerobically for a while, yeah, you get that real good feeling. You know, you get happy, and you know the logical, you know, day-to-day business worrying side of your brain kind of shuts down, which is a nice byproduct. Well, that kind of becomes addictive, and I don't mean addictive like a drug addict necessarily, but you get so that, hey, you want to go out there and get that fix. Well, then it kind of grows, and people, I think, also discover that it's really exciting to test the boundaries that your body
has. See how far you can go,
keep pushing them back. You know, first you're amazed when you can run 5 miles, and then you're getting up to a marathon, and you're amazed that you could run 26.2, and then you're thinking, well, hey, if I could run 26.2, maybe I can do that after I've swum 2 miles and ridden for 100, you know.
It was just amazing for me to watch. Now, most people don't really start running till later on in life. You know, you run in PE class when you're young, or you might go out for the track and field team, but I think locally and even at the college level, you don't see a whole lot of track and field on television anymore. You see more marathons and triathlons than actual competitive track meets. You know, is track and field dying a slow death at the high school and college levels, and the sport itself, you know, not getting enough airtime on television, for instance, and maybe there's not a lot of youth that are interested in it? I mean, do you see that coming?
Well, actually, it brings to mind some issues that I've identified, and a lot of us who have produced road races have identified for years, and I will inevitably get some flack for saying this, but the sport of track and field has been mishandled in this country, in my opinion. You know, we do a great job we get everybody excited about the Olympics, and then 4 more years lapse, and we don't see anything.
It's like every 4 years you get to watch track and field, and that's it.
Yeah. Well, there's an organization that just changed its name. It actually used to be called the Athletics Congress. So that was a sanctioning organization for running events, track and field. They've now changed the name to USA Track and Field. Now they actually govern all running events, and it was somewhat of an insult to the millions of runners who run all in road races, not in track and field, that the organization that sanctions and you know, does all the stat keeping and sets all the rules is called the USA Track and Field.
So it concluded everything.
Yeah, right. But to me, it's an example of how little the officials in in track and field in this country understand promotions. They understand the sport, but they have not gotten into promotions.
There's no marketing, Like Carl Lewis is a god in Europe in track and field, but you know, he comes to the United States, is not even known, doesn't even have any contracts. I guess this is part of what you're saying. Yeah,
the grassroots isn't there. I mean, the obvious thing is that sportscasters generally on many TV stations, and I don't mean this as an overall generalization, but many of them have no background in track and field, and so when they're presented with a story in track and field,
they just blow
it means nothing to them. I can recall a few years ago with actually it was back in just before the LA Olympics. Rob DiCastella, you remember that name?
Yeah, I sure do.
He was considered to be the #1 contender for the Olympic marathon, considered to be the best marathoner in the world. He came to a running event we were putting on, just lucked into it, really. He happened to be around one and run a race.
And got him.
We put the story out to the media, and people were saying, and the sportscasters were saying, Rob who? Well, I mean, and it hasn't changed. There isn't the background knowledge. I don't blame that on sportscasters as much as I do blame it on the officials who governed track and field. The fact that they haven't done the grassroots work of educating sportscasters and therefore planting the seed so that when the stories are there, they get some attention. You got to have people understand the background. You got to understand the drama of the competition. You got to know the difference between a 5-minute mile and a 4-minute mile and what that means in speed. And you got to know some names. Look how few heroes we've had in running.
That's true.
You mentioned Jim Fix. What other names have really become household words? Bill Rogers,
Marty LaCourie,
Frank Shorter. Those guys.
And they're all marathoners.
Well, and they're all over 40 years old.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Of recent years, we get a few names around the time of Beta Breakers, which gets more attention here. We get, we might become familiar with somebody like Arturo Barrios, or
and only because they come through town to run the Beta Breakers, and that's been turned into more of a sideshow, than it is for the actual race. Although there is competition. Now money is starting to seep into the sport. There's prize money in a lot of these marathons, or they can win cars, and maybe it has to be taken to the next level where you're talking about you can get correct marketing, get sponsors, and get these things on television. And I think there's a little more incentive for guys who've been running for a long time now, because now they can win some money.
Yeah, the money's there, and although the big money is still, on a consistent basis, is still in road races.
And unlike other sports, you have to win the money. You're not on salary like these other guys.
Well, some running events will pay appearance fee money to get the right field there, and certainly an event like the New York City Marathon, is going to pay appearance money to have a good field. But by and large, I mean, you don't get that appearance fee money unless you've won a few either. You got to have the record. But the money has developed in road races, not as much because of the top athletes. That's misunderstood. In fact, it's misunderstood, I think, by elite athletes as well as, I think, by the media in some ways. The money is really developed because of the masses. Running events have now become a major way to reach a crowd.
Like you said, you can get 100,000 people at the marathon or Beta Breakers.
Yeah, right. And so when a company looks at becoming a sponsor or putting money into that event, they're not as concerned about those elite athletes. I mean, that provides some of the drama of the show, sure. But they get to make an impact on 100,000 people.
That's true.
And so, in fact, a telltale of that is that running shoe companies have really backed out of putting money into road races. You don't see they're still in some. They're still in some. But Nike, Reeboks, the Vias, those shoe companies used to be involved. They used to be one of the major sponsors of most big running.
Why have they dropped out?
Well, because running shoes were initially running shoes, then they became our footwear of choice,
Yeah.
and it's very broad-based. I mean, you know,
Yeah.
running shoes are no longer sold to runners,
Right.
and in fact,
You're
that's
not
a
gonna-
small market. You
Right.
really got a broader-based
Well, that
market.
makes
So
sense.
the marketing side, but then what replaced that were companies who realized that runners are a heck of a demographic to hit.
Exactly.
They're generally
Right. 25 to 55, which you're
fairly
looking to
affluent,
sell. Right.
you know, college educated generally,
Right.
professionals of one kind or another. So companies look at, hell, if I want to make an impact,
Marketing their products.
yeah, then that group, I'm going to sponsor a run.
Well, speaking of which, most people who take it up later in life, guys our age, you have the problem with the weekend athlete. There's so little leisure time anymore. Everybody's working so hard just to keep up with the economy and this and that. And as a result, you have all these weekend athletes who go out and get injured. You know, I play basketball one night a week, and it takes me like 4 days to recover because I don't do it all the time. I mean, what are some recommendations from you for guys like this who are just trying to do it on the weekends?
Well, never play basketball with guys that are bigger than you, for one
Or
thing.
younger, yeah, exactly, yeah.
Or
Right.
younger.
Yeah, right.
No, consistency is really the key.
Uh-huh.
You know, the term weekend athlete, I know I think that's what I kind of think of as in terms of runners, the masses of runners who are coming out to running events too, but they're not, you can't just do it on the weekend. You know, you can focus on the weekend, but you got to put in 2 or 3 days midweek where you're also working out, so that you're not just, you know, every weekend you're going out
Pulling
there.
muscles and yeah.
Yeah, the consistency is the key. And the biggest single thing, no matter whether it's running or cycling or whatever, basketball or anything, especially as we get older, well, we both have gray
Same
hair,
age, yeah, yeah.
is stretching.
Right.
A lot of people ignore that, but if you can stay flexible and if you can develop a daily routine, I for example, and I just got lucky. I don't know how I developed this, but I stretch in the shower. and
By yourself?
So every time I take a shower, you know, once a week,
Yeah.
no, right? No, every time I take a shower, I stretch. Well, the consistency of that actually helps, you know, keep you from being injured.
Right.
And I'm not suggesting everybody stretch in the shower, but
Right.
stretching, there's nothing like it to avoid injury.
I agree, because when I was a player, that's what I did more than anything, was stretch and stay limber.
And some people will stretch, they'll say, well, I'm going to go play basketball this weekend, so I'll stretch right before I go to the game.
Yeah, exactly.
That doesn't do it. Actually,
Right.
that hurts more than helps. It's every day.
All right,
Stretch those muscles out.
In terms of trends, you know, it went from jogging, it went to Stairmaster, personal trainers. You know, what do you see, any future trends that you see in physical fitness that we might want to know about?
Well, you know, there's some new sports coming along that I think we're going to see develop more of. Inline skating, for example.
Right.
In fact, we just produced our first inline skating event called Ruby Red's Red Hot and Rolling this last September, and it was a big
You're seeing
hit.
a lot more of them out in the streets.
Yeah, and of course the obstacle there compared to running, and the reason nothing else takes off like running, is it's not very expensive equipment. You know,
right.
inline skating costs some money. I mean, you gotta get the right skates and the pads and everything. And of course, once you get them, a whole lot of places to skate. In fact, more and more places to skate, and less where you can walk on dirt. But that's going to develop, I think, somewhat. But I think more than anything, the trend is just going to continue for people to be diverse. You know, so people are going to do the inline skating, but those people are also going to be doing some running, doing some biking, you know, going to the gym, doing some weights now and then, and just generally having an active lifestyle. And I think that's just gonna continue to blossom in that direction.
Now, jogging also over the years, it found that it creates some problems with your knee joints, your ankles, maybe your lower back. And I know myself with a knee injury, it makes it hard for me to run more than about a mile without it aching. And I love to run. I mean, it's like you said, you can have nobody to play tennis with, play basketball, but you can go out and run by yourself all day. And I think more than anything, a lot of guys are forced into other things because, you know, the pressure, like cycling. You know, I'm doing a lot more mountain biking now because it's less stress on my joints. Do you see that with the development of age? You know, people are jumping to different modes of exercise, really because their body's sort of dictating it.
Yeah. Yeah, and walking as well. I mean, I think more cycling and more walking. I mean, a good example, we saw photos earlier of Run to the Far Side. And I mentioned, you know, 12 to 14,000 people on that event. Well, and that event is 10th anniversary is next year, so 9 years. Well, in the first year, I'd say 80% of the people were running. Now, about 60% of those people are running, the rest are walking. Of course, the event accommodates both. It's real easy. You could just walk the course instead of run it.
Right.
And the reason for the transition, of course, is the age of the runners is increasing. The median age of runners now in the United States is 38 years old. Median age of any given
People
running
are
group.
involved.
So yeah, so the knees start to go, and you still want that aerobic activity. Walking is a great alternative, and I think it's really good for couples too. I mean, I think groups, friends.
That's true. I've been reduced to that. Sort of, I would say reduced to that, but you know what I mean. With my other half, I'm just kidding, hon. But it's an aerobic exercise. Now, the Bay Area, too, I mean, you really couldn't have landed. You went to college in Indiana, went on to Hawaii, now you're back in San Francisco. Maybe one of the most diverse in terms of road races throughout, because you can go maybe every weekend somewhere in the Bay Area, San Jose, wherever, and find a race, correct?
Yeah, and that's just a wonderful thing about the Bay Area. It really is a mecca of fitness lifestyle, and at the heart of that, and really at the beginning of it, is running. Any given weekend in the Bay Area, you can look at a publication like the Schedule magazine, which I mentioned earlier. It's really the Bible of these events. It's just listings of all. Well, any given weekend, you will find 6 to 8 running events on every weekend on an average in the Bay Area. That's incredible.
Right.
5K,
10Ks, yours 2 miles, and marathons. You talk about running marathons. People are still doing this on a regular basis.
Yeah, marathons. What have happened actually with the longer distance runs like that? Half marathons, 20 kilometers, that whole range. There are fewer of them now. I mean, some of them just haven't made it. They're a very expensive thing to produce. I mean, when you think about setting something up that goes 26 miles through the streets and all these aid stations and whatnot, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of money to make it happen. So there are fewer of them now, but the ones that remain, L.A., San Francisco,
Boston,
New York, Chicago, Boston, have grown. And so the participation in marathons hasn't really dropped off, and it seems that
more selective.
Yeah, but most people at some point seem to want to get at least one marathon in to say they did it. So it continues to draw that crowd.
All right, what's the phone number that somebody can call you if they're interested in any race or putting together a race?
Well, the hotline for First Run, which is coming up on New Year's Eve, as well as a listing of all of our other running events, is 415-387-2178.
All right, Dave. We appreciate your time. It was a lot of fun, and good luck to you in the first run. Maybe I'll even come out and race. All right. For everybody here at One on One, I'm Mike Shumann, and of course, we'll see you next week.
Promotional consideration by Big Nate's Barbecue. Doesn't some chicken and ribs sound good right about now? Call Big Nate, 861-4242.